To be truly seen by a frightened person is not to be welcomed. It is to become the thing they circle from a careful distance, like a sun too bright to approach and too necessary to abandon. You have almost certainly arrived at the wrong conclusion. The mind does what minds do when they are trying to make sense of pain that does not come with a clean explanation. It fills the gap between what happened and what was expected with the most available narrative. And the most available narrative, when someone keeps their distance from you, when they retreat at the precise moment you believed something real was forming between you, when they seem to manage perfectly fine in the orbit of people who matter to them less, is that you are the problem. That something about the specific quality of who you are is what they are moving away from. That the distance is a response to you rather than a response to what you make them feel about themselves. This narrative is wrong, not in a consoling, softening, telling you what you want to hear way. Wrong in the precise, structural, psychologically documented way of a conclusion that has mistaken the symptom for the cause. The distance is not a verdict on your worth. It is a measurement of your significance. And in the avoidance interior world, in the specific, rarely examined geography of how they experience the people who matter most to them, those two things are not just different. They are opposite. The avoidant has a relationship with significance that is unlike almost anyone else's. For most people, significance is something to move toward. When someone matters, when they register in the interior world as genuinely important, genuinely irreplaceable, genuinely the kind of person whose presence changes the quality of things, the natural response is approach, closeness, the instinct to be near the thing that matters, to protect the access to it, to build the kind of reliable proximity that ensures it remains available. The avoidance nervous system learned a different lesson. For them, significance is not a signal to approach. It is a signal to be careful, to manage, to assess the risk before proceeding, and in most cases where the significance reaches a certain depth, to retreat entirely while the retreat is still a choice rather than a consequence. Their entire attachment history taught them that the things that matter most are the things most capable of causing the deepest damage. That the higher the significance, the higher the exposure. That love and loss are not opposites but a sequence. Love first, then inevitably, eventually, loss. And the only way to avoid the loss is to never fully commit to the love. Ordinary people do not trigger this calculus with any great intensity. The avoidant can engage with ordinary people, can be warm and present, and even generous with their emotional availability in the limited, surface-level way their attachment style permits, because the stakes are low enough that the calculus does not fire with any real alarm. When someone does not matter deeply, the avoidance attachment system remains relatively calm. There is nothing significant enough to lose, and therefore nothing threatening enough to retreat from. You triggered the calculus, not because of a flaw, because of a depth. There is a specific quality that makes a person register as significant to the avoidant in the way that activates the retreat, and it is worth examining with precision because it is so consistently misread. It is not the quality of being impressive. The avoidant encounters impressive people with reasonable equanimity, because impressiveness is an external quality that can be appreciated from a distance. It is not the quality of being warm or kind, though these matter and are noticed. It is something more interior, more specific, more threatening to the particular vulnerability the avoidant carries. It is the quality of genuineness, of being, in the most complete sense, real. You are not performing yourself. You are not presenting a curated version of your interior life, calibrated to produce a particular response in the people around you. You exist in the world as the full, unedited, entirely actual version of yourself, with your depths and your complications and your particular way of engaging with things that makes the people who are paying attention feel, in your presence, that they are in the presence of something authentic. Something that would be the same whether or not you knew you were being observed. Something that does not require the usual social performance to sustain itself. This genuineness is what the avoidant is retreating from, because genuineness is contagious in the way that certain qualities are contagious. It creates an implicit invitation to reciprocate, to meet real with real, to respond to someone's full presence by bringing your own full presence. And the avoidant, whose full presence includes a fear and a need and a longing that they have spent years and considerable psychological effort keeping invisible, cannot afford to be around someone who makes the performance of not having those things feel suddenly, uncomfortably, transparently inadequate. You make the performance feel hollow. Not through any active effort, simply through the contrast that your genuineness creates with the version of themselves the avoidant is continuously trying to sustain. And a performance that feels hollow is a performance that is becoming impossible to maintain. And a performance that is becoming impossible to maintain is a self that is becoming vulnerable to exposure. And exposure, the specific terrifying exposure of being fully known, is the one thing the avoidant's entire architecture was built to prevent. So they move away from you, not toward safety, toward the familiar. The familiar and the safe are not the same thing for the avoidant, but they have been confused for so long that the distinction is no longer accessible without significant internal excavation. What the avoidant thinks about you in the private hours when the distance they have created provides enough space for the thoughts to surface without the immediate threat of having to act on them is something they would struggle to articulate even if they were willing to try. It is not a simple admiration, though admiration is present. It is not a simple desire, though desire is present. It is something more composite and more consequential than either. They think you are the one. Not in the romantic shorthand of that phrase, though in some cases that too, but in the more precise sense of the one who would actually know them, the one whose perception is deep enough and honest enough and steady enough that the performance would eventually, inevitably become unsustainable in your presence. The one around whom the version of themselves they have been carefully presenting to the world would finally, exhaustedly come down. And what would be underneath it, the fear, the need, the complicated and sometimes overwhelming inner world that the performance exists to conceal, would be visible, entirely irreversibly visible. They think you are the one who would see that and stay. And this thought, this specific combination of being fully known and being stayed for, is the most frightening thought the avoidant is capable of having. Because it is the thought that contains everything they want and everything they fear simultaneously, compressed into a single unbearable possibility. You represent the thing they have been protecting themselves from, and quietly, privately, desperately hoping for their entire relational lives. And the coexistence of those two things, the hope and the fear, in the same person, arriving at the same time, produces not the approach that the hope calls for, but the retreat that the fear demands. There is also a specific way the avoidant experiences your independence that deserves examination, because it is one of the least intuitive aspects of why someone who thinks you are special responds by creating distance rather than closing it. Your independence, the quality of being someone who exists fully outside of the avoidance orbit, who does not need their validation to know their own worth, who would be entirely and recognizably themselves regardless of what the avoidant decided to offer or withhold, is something the avoidant holds in genuine, almost reluctant awe. Most of the people the avoidant has navigated relationships with have needed something from them. Needed it in the way that creates the pressure the avoidant finds so difficult to inhabit, the subtle but persistent weight of being someone's emotional anchor, the felt responsibility for another person's sense of security, the knowledge that their withdrawal has direct and visible consequences in the person they are withdrawing from, This need, however understandable in its origins, however forgivable in its expression, has always been the thing the avoidant manages by maintaining the exact degree of distance that keeps the need from becoming the avoidant's responsibility to meet. You do not carry need in this way. Your wholeness is self-generating. Your security has a source inside yourself that does not require the avoidance investment to remain funded, and this should, in theory, make you easier for the avoidant to be close to. The pressure is absent, the weight is not there, the usual trigger for retreat has been removed, but it creates a different, more subtle, and in some ways more threatening dynamic. If you do not need the avoidant in the ordinary way, then the avoidant cannot use the management of your need as an unconscious way of keeping you at a distance while appearing to be present. The usual mechanism: engage enough to meet the immediate need, retreat when the engagement becomes too close, return when the distance has created a new need that requires management, does not function with you. Because your need, whatever form it takes, is not a lever the avoidant can pull to modulate the closeness. You engage with them when you choose to, from a place of genuine desire rather than anxious requirement. And you disengage with the same ease, not as manipulation, not as a strategy, but as the natural behavior of someone whose sense of self does not rise and fall with the avoidance availability. This ease, in both the engagement and the disengagement, is deeply, quietly destabilizing for the avoidant, because it means that whatever happens between you will be a genuine choice on both sides. Not a dynamic, not a managed system of need and response, but an actual mutual choosing. And genuine mutual choosing requires the avoidant to show up as a genuine chooser, as someone who is in the connection because they want the connection, transparently and without the protective ambiguity of being the one who is needed rather than the one who needs. Wanting for the avoidant is far more exposing than being needed. Being needed gives them a role, a function, a way of being present in a connection without revealing the full vulnerability of their own desire. Wanting, genuine, unmistakable, undefendable wanting, has no such protection. It simply is. Visible, undeniable, and entirely at the mercy of whether the person they want chooses to receive the wanting. You require the avoidant to want rather than to be needed, and wanting you, in the full and vulnerable sense that your significance calls for, is the most exposed the avoidant has ever been asked to be. The staying away is not indifference wearing a disguise. Indifference does not generate the specific quality of attention the avoidant gives to your absence. The particular way their awareness tracks you even across the distance they have placed between you, the involuntary noticing of anything in their world that carries an association with the specific quality of who you are. Indifference does not produce the comparison, constant, unflattering to everyone else, entirely involuntary, of every subsequent person against the template your presence created. Indifference does not produce the private, unwitnessed moments of reckoning with what the distance is costing, what the retreat has protected them from gaining. The staying away is significance, taking the only form the avoidance fear currently permits it to take. It is love that has not yet found the courage to be love. It is the wanting that cannot yet say its own name. It is the recognition, clear, certain, privately devastating, that you are the special one, held at exactly the distance required to prevent that recognition from becoming the vulnerable, life-altering act of actually telling you so. They think you are the special one. The distance is not the denial of that. It is the proof of it, twisted through fear into a shape that looks, from the outside, like its opposite. And somewhere in the quiet of the space they keep between you, they know it. They have always known it. The distance is not about what you lack. It is about what you are, entirely, completely, in a way they have never encountered before and may not have the courage to receive, and how terrifying it is to finally, after all this time, Find exactly what you were afraid you were looking for.